Have you ever wondered who invented the tools, machines, and ideas that shaped the modern world? What if I told you that centuries ago, brilliant Muslim inventors were creating robots, mechanical clocks, advanced surgical tools, and even revolutionary water devices, long before the modern era? Guided by the teachings of the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, they saw knowledge as a form of worship, a way to serve humanity, and a path to understanding the Creator. Scholars like Al-Jazari, Ibn Sina, and Al-Khwarizmi weren't just thinkers, they were problem solvers, innovators, and visionaries who transformed daily life, science, and technology. Their inventions laid the foundation for modern medicine, engineering, and mathematics. These hidden stories remind us that innovation is not new, it's a legacy. Remembering these inventors inspires us to pursue knowledge, curiosity, and creativity with purpose and ethics, just as they did centuries ago. Muslim inventors and scholars approached science and engineering in a way that was deeply intertwined with their faith, viewing knowledge not as a mere pursuit of curiosity or status, but as a form of worship and a means to serve humanity. The Quran encourages reflection upon creation, the study of natural phenomena, and the pursuit of knowledge to understand the signs of Allah in the universe. This perspective created a culture where seeking knowledge was considered a moral and spiritual responsibility. Learning and innovation were never divorced from ethical principles. Each discovery was meant to benefit society, ease human suffering, and fulfill the broader purpose of human life as prescribed in Islam. The Prophet Muhammad consistently emphasized the value of seeking knowledge, stating that it is an obligation upon every Muslim, male and female alike, and praising those who traverse paths of learning. This guidance fostered a climate in which intellectual exploration, problem solving, and experimentation were encouraged, not feared. It instilled in scholars the mindset that inventions and scientific discoveries were not personal achievements to boast about, but gifts and responsibilities that should be used wisely. By grounding innovation in a moral and spiritual framework, Muslim inventors developed a culture where education, creativity, and ethical responsibility were inseparable. This approach ensured that discoveries would be applied for the benefit of humanity, promoting social welfare, justice, and progress. Al-Jazari, one of the most remarkable figures in this tradition, exemplifies the integration of faith, creativity, and practical problem solving. Working in the 12th and 13th centuries, he combined engineering, art, and science to design machines that were functional, precise, and often astonishingly complex. His work included water-raising devices, automata, clocks, and ingenious mechanisms for irrigation and urban management. Every invention reflected careful observation, rigorous experimentation, and a desire to solve real-world problems, whether for daily life, agriculture, or public service. These devices were not created for mere entertainment or intellectual curiosity. They were aimed at improving society, making life easier for people, and demonstrating the harmonious relationship between knowledge and ethical purpose. The very act of invention was framed as a form of worship, where diligence, creativity, and precision were ways to honor the gifts of Allah. Al-Jazari's manuscripts, complete with detailed illustrations and step-by-step instructions, reveal a mind dedicated to both intellectual excellence and practical application. His work demonstrates that Islamic civilization did not see knowledge as an abstract or theoretical pursuit, but as a means to enhance human life, guided by spiritual and moral responsibility. Ibn Sina, another towering figure, extended this faith-driven approach to the realm of medicine. His encyclopedic works, such as the Canon of Medicine, compiled centuries of medical knowledge, integrating insights from Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions, while also adding his original observation. Ibn Sina emphasized systematic experimentation, detailed observation, and the ethical practice of medicine. In treating patients, he stressed not only accuracy and effectiveness, but also compassion, dignity, and the moral duty of the physician. Medicine, in his view, was both a science and a service, a practical application of knowledge meant to preserve life and alleviate suffering. This dual focus, rigorous science and ethical responsibility, reflected the broader Islamic principle that intellectual work should benefit creation. Ibn Sina's medical texts were used in both the Muslim world and later in Europe for centuries, demonstrating the enduring influence of combining faith, ethics, and knowledge. The integration of moral purpose with intellectual endeavor was a defining feature of Islamic innovation. Scholars were taught that the pursuit of knowledge without ethical grounding could lead to misuse, while knowledge applied to benefit society was highly rewarded. Education was not for prestige or personal gain. It was a sacred trust. Muslim inventors approached each challenge with humility, acknowledging that their abilities and insights were gifts from Allah and should be directed toward service. This world, you encouraged collaborative learning, meticulous documentation, and careful preservation of knowledge, ensuring that discoveries could be shared, verified, and built upon by future generations. It also fostered resilience in the face of obstacles. Scholars like Al-Jazari and Ibn Sina often worked in difficult conditions, limited resources, political instability, or societal constraints. But their faith and moral commitment provided the motivation to persevere. Innovation became not only a professional or intellectual pursuit, but a spiritual discipline, where patience, precision, and ethical reflection were integral to the work itself. This emphasis on ethics and service shaped the types of inventions and discoveries pursued. Tools, machines, and knowledge were developed to address practical societal needs. Efficient water management, agricultural improvements, medical care, public utilities, and scientific instrumentation. The combination of faith, inspired motivation, and rigorous methodology produced results that were both technically sophisticated and socially beneficial. Muslim inventors approached problems holistically, considering the broader impact of their work on communities, social justice, and human welfare. Education and research were deeply valued, and scholarship was respected because it was seen as a vehicle for both worldly benefit and spiritual fulfillment. In conclusion, the first two keynotes, approaching science as an act of worship and the ethical, faith-driven pursuit of knowledge exemplified by figures like Al-Jazari and Ibn Sina, reveal how Islamic civilization created an environment where innovation was inseparable from moral responsibility. Knowledge was pursued with humility, rigor, and an unwavering commitment to benefit humanity. These principles ensured that inventions were not only groundbreaking, but ethically sound, practically useful, and spiritually rewarding. The legacy of Muslim inventors demonstrates that science and technology, when guided by faith and ethics, can transform societies, improve lives, and leave a lasting imprint on civilization. This integration of spirituality, morality, and intellect set a standard for innovation that continues to inspire the world today. Muslim scholars and inventors made extraordinary advancements in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, and their contributions were deeply intertwined with both practical necessity and ethical consideration. The third keynote, which focuses on the development of medicine, demonstrates the careful blend of observation, experimentation, and compassion that characterized Islamic scientific inquiry. Medicine was considered not merely a technical skill, but a moral responsibility. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the sanctity of life and the duty to preserve it, and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad reinforced this principle, urging believers to care for the sick and to seek knowledge that benefits humanity. This framework shaped the medical endeavors of scholars such as Ibn Sina, Al-Razi, and Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who devoted themselves to understanding diseases, human anatomy, and therapeutic methods with remarkable precision and dedication. Ibn Sina's canon of medicine synthesized centuries of medical knowledge, drawing from Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions, while introducing his own empirical observations and systematic methodology. He emphasized diagnosis based on careful observation, experimentation, and logical deduction. Treatment, according to his approach, was not just a matter of technical proficiency, but also required ethical consideration, compassion for the patient, and respect for human dignity. Al-Razi, another towering figure, conducted clinical observations and experiments that contributed to pediatrics, ophthalmology, and pharmacology. Hospitals in the Muslim world, such as those in Baghdad, Cairo, and Damascus, were organized institutions where patients received care regardless of social status or wealth, reflecting the ethical principles that guided medical practice. These hospitals also served as centers of medical education, research, and innovation, highlighting how scientific development was interwoven with societal welfare. The ethical and moral dimension of medicine ensured that knowledge was applied for the good of the community, reinforcing the Islamic principle that saving a single life is akin to saving all of humanity. The fourth keynote, focusing on mathematics and astronomy, illustrates how scientific pursuits were closely connected to daily religious and social life, as well as the pursuit of knowledge for practical applications. Mathematics was not only an abstract discipline, but a tool for ensuring fairness, justice, and order in society. It was applied in trade, inheritance, taxation, architecture, and legal ruling. The development of algebra by Al-Khwarizmi, for example, provided systematic methods for solving equations that had practical applications in land measurement, construction, and commerce. Islamic scholars also advanced geometry and trigonometry to address problems in architecture, navigation, and astronomy. Astronomy was of immense significance, both for understanding the cosmos and for religious practices such as determining prayer times, the direction of the Qibla, and the Islamic calendar. Scholars meticulously observed celestial bodies, recorded planetary motions, and developed astronomical tables and instruments like astrolabes to improve precision. Observatories in Baghdad, Maragha, and Samarkand became centers of meticulous observation, calculations, and teaching, where students learned to integrate mathematical theory with empirical observation. This rigorous approach allowed Muslim astronomers to correct earlier errors from Greek and Indian sources, refine astronomical models, and influence later European developments during the Renaissance. The combination of mathematical sophistication and practical application exemplified the Islamic approach to science, where theory and practice reinforced each other, and knowledge was pursued with a sense of responsibility toward both society and spiritual principles. Innovation was always balanced with ethical reflection, ensuring that advancements served the common good and contributed positively to human life. Muslim scholars' work in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy was characterized by meticulous methodology, careful documentation, and a commitment to truth and precision. Observations were recorded systematically, experiments were repeated, and findings were preserved in detailed manuscripts. These texts were often translated into multiple languages, including Latin, which allowed the knowledge to spread beyond the Muslim world and shape the development of science in Europe. Ethical considerations were embedded in every aspect of scholarly practice. Scholars were constantly mindful of how their discoveries would impact society, and the moral imperative to use knowledge for the benefit of humanity guided both theoretical inquiry and practical innovation. Hospitals, schools, and observatories became institutional embodiments of this integration, where students were trained not only in technical skills but also in the ethical and spiritual responsibilities of scholarship. This approach ensured continuity of knowledge across generations and created an environment where innovation could flourish responsibly. The integration of ethics, practicality, and intellectual rigor also fostered collaboration among scholars, who often shared ideas, built upon previous discoveries, and critiqued each other's work constructively. This culture of scholarly discourse contributed to cumulative advancement in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. Muslim scholars were aware of the interconnectedness of knowledge. Innovations in one field often informed and enhanced understanding in others. For instance, precise astronomical calculations required advanced mathematics, which in turn influenced navigation, architecture, and even the development of mechanical devices. Similarly, medical experimentation relied on careful measurement, documentation, and analysis, reflecting a shared commitment to methodical inquiry across discipline. By integrating faith, ethics, and empirical observation, Islamic scholars created a holistic scientific tradition that emphasized the moral and social dimensions of knowledge. The results of these efforts were profound and far-reaching. In medicine, innovations such as surgical instruments, pharmacological methods, and systematic approaches to diagnosis influenced generations of physicians and shaped the foundations of modern medical practice. In mathematics, the development of algebra, trigonometry, and numerical methods enabled advances in engineering, architecture, and later European scientific thought. In astronomy, precise observations, instruments, and models laid the groundwork for navigation, timekeeping, and the scientific revolution that would emerge centuries later. These contributions were not isolated achievements. They represented a coherent intellectual culture that valued knowledge as a means of understanding the world, serving society, and fulfilling spiritual responsibilities. The meticulous preservation, documentation, and application of scientific knowledge ensured that innovations were not lost to history, but transmitted across regions and generations. By approaching medicine, mathematics, and astronomy through a lens of ethical responsibility, practical application, and empirical rigor, Muslim scholars exemplified the harmonious integration of faith and reason. Their work demonstrates that science and spirituality can coexist, reinforcing one another rather than existing in opposition. Knowledge was pursued with the dual objectives of understanding creation and improving human life, ensuring that innovation served moral, social, and spiritual ends. The fourth keynote illustrates that scientific advancement in Islamic civilization was not accidental. It was the result of deliberate, principled engagement with the world, guided by both intellect and ethics. This legacy continues to inspire modern scholarship, reminding us that scientific excellence and moral responsibility are inseparable when knowledge is applied for the benefit of humanity and aligned with higher principles. In Islamic civilization, knowledge was never pursued in isolation from moral responsibility. Scholars and inventors were consistently aware that their discoveries, inventions, and ideas were gifts entrusted to them by Allah, and they were accountable for how these were applied in society. This ethical framework created a culture in which science and technology were inseparable from social welfare and morality. Scholars like Al-Jazari, Ibn Sina, and Al-Izmi understood that their work was not merely for personal recognition or prestige, but for the benefit of communities, the alleviation of suffering, and the betterment of humanity. This principle of ethical responsibility meant that inventions were designed with care, precision, and purpose. In medicine, this translated to the creation of hospitals that served all people, regardless of social status, and to surgical instruments that emphasized patient safety and dignity. In mathematics, calculations were used to ensure fairness in trade, inheritance, and taxation, reflecting a concern for justice and societal order. In astronomy, observations were applied to determine prayer times and the Islamic calendar, linking scientific precision with spiritual practice. The pursuit of knowledge was, therefore, not an abstract or purely intellectual exercise. It was an ethical obligation that served both worldly and spiritual aim. Scholars constantly reflected on the implications of their work, asking themselves whether it contributed positively to society and whether it honored the moral principles laid out in the Quran and Sunnah. This ethical consciousness acted as a safeguard against misuse of knowledge and fostered a culture of responsible innovation that considered the long-term welfare of humanity. Muslim inventors approached every problem holistically, integrating ethical reflection with empirical observation and technical skill. Their inventions were not only ingenious, but were conceived and implemented with a profound awareness of their social and moral consequences. This approach cultivated humility, accountability, and a spirit of service among scholars, ensuring that scientific advancement was aligned with both human and divine values. The sixth keynote examines the lasting impact of Islamic contributions on global science and technology, demonstrating that the innovations of Muslim scholars were not isolated achievements but foundational pillars for modern civilization. Knowledge developed in the Islamic world, including advanced mathematical theories, medical practices, mechanical devices, and astronomical observations, traveled through translations and exchanges across regions, profoundly influencing European and later global scientific development. Latin translations of works such as Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine and Al-Qayyaj, Khwarizmi's algebra became core references in European universities and medical schools for centuries, bridging the intellectual achievements of the Islamic world with the European Renaissance. Similarly, Al-Jazari's engineering manuals, which described mechanical devices and automata, informed later mechanical and industrial advancements, demonstrating a lineage of innovation that extends into modern engineering principles. The Islamic Golden Age established not only specific discoveries, but also a methodological approach to science observation, documentation, experimentation, and ethical application that continues to underpin modern scientific inquiry. Observatories, hospitals, and educational institutions in cities such as Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba were not just sites of knowledge accumulation, but incubators of innovation, training scholars who would expand and disseminate their discoveries across continents. This intellectual infrastructure fostered an environment where knowledge was cumulative and collaborative, and where careful documentation allowed successive generations to refine, adapt, and apply earlier insights. The emphasis on ethics and social responsibility meant that these contributions had enduring societal value, shaping legal systems, medical ethics, technological development, and scientific methodology. By integrating purpose, morality, and empirical rigor, Islamic scholars created a sustainable model for innovation that not only addressed the immediate needs of their communities, but also provided a foundation for future scientific revolution. The transmission of this knowledge ensured that the Islamic contributions were not lost to history. They became part of a shared global heritage that underlies much of modern science and technology. Today, the influence of Islamic scholarship can be seen in hospitals, universities, mathematical systems, engineering principles, and astronomical methods that continue to guide contemporary practice. The sixth keynote, therefore, underscores that Islamic contributions were transformative, bridging cultures and centuries, and establishing a legacy that continues to inform, inspire, and shape human progress. Muslim scholars demonstrated that when knowledge is pursued ethically, purposefully, and with a commitment to humanity, It leaves an impact far beyond its time, shaping civilizations and inspiring future generations to innovate responsibly. The combination of moral guidance and intellectual rigor ensured that Islamic science and technology not only advanced their own society, but also created enduring pathways for global knowledge, illustrating a model of innovation where faith, ethics, and reason work in harmony to serve the greater good. The world we live in today owes so much to Muslim inventors and scholars whose discoveries, guided by faith and ethics, shaped medicine, mathematics, engineering, and astronomy. Their legacy is not just history. It's a reminder that knowledge, when combined with purpose and responsibility, can change the world. Let their story inspire you to seek knowledge, innovate with integrity, and make a positive impact on humanity. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories from Islamic history.